Welcome to the Play-Based Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen R.B. Peterson, and maybe your new teacher bestie that is here to hype you up, maybe give you a motivating kick in the pants, and teach you all I know about play and childhood. I am here to help you challenge old and outdated practices and inspire you to create a truly developmentally appropriate early childhood environment that fosters creativity, curiosity, and joy in the children that you care for. Let's set the stage for a lifelong love of learning. Let's get going. Amanda Morgan is joining me this morning. I think I just cut her off mid-sentence when I hit
You're
record.
so good.
From Not Just Cute. You can ask me that question in a little bit. Don't forget it. I don't know.
No problem.
It was about our microphone. Was it about a microphone?
It's all good.
Okay. That's what we call a hook. We just hooked you in. Now you want to know what the question is. So what was the question?
I was actually asking if you use video or just the audio, so I can check my face.
No, we just use the audio. So
Excellent. Okay, then I can make all the weird faces that I make when I talk.
You can. However, people
Sweet.
will probably now they're going to envision you making weird faces. Like they're envisioning you with a Snapchat filter over your face for the entire podcast.
Sweet.
So Amanda Morgan from her Instagram is called Not Just Cute, and I freaking love that. Like, how come I didn't think of that? Because that's so good. How long have you had coined that term, Not Just Cute? How long has that been you?
I believe I started the blog with that name about 16, maybe 17 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah, it started back. I have to give a friend of mine some of the credit. We were grad students together and had this little closet office that we shared, and we were mentoring undergrad students. And that was one of our conversations that we would talk about, that as we would meet with these undergrads to talk about what they were doing, that just how often the word cute came up, that they'd be talking about their lesson plans and say, this is going to be so cute. And we would just say, if I hear the word cute one more time, like cute is fine, but it can't just be cute. It needs to go beyond just the cute. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. Okay. I'm going to talk about another word right now. So I'm going to tell you a word and you're going to tell me what you think of this word and your first initial thoughts around it. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. The word is rigor.
Rigor. The next word, if I'm being polite, is that it's misunderstood, misused completely.
Yeah. Don't be
I don't
polite.
like it.
Just go all in.
I don't like it. I feel like, well, the way I wrote in my book was that, in The Princess Bride, when Inigo Montoya says, you keep using that word, I do not think it means what you think it means. That's what I think every time I hear the word rigor. Like, I don't think this means what you think it means. It's like that embarrassment that you feel when somebody keeps using a word the wrong way. You're like, I'm so embarrassed for you guys. You keep using this word wrong. Yeah, I feel like.
Okay. My
Go
ADHD brain just went. I've been watching Bachelor in Paradise, and they used a word at least 20 times on the episode that I watched yesterday. He was saying, I deaded it, like DEADED. I deaded it. I deaded it. That's deaded. And I was like, what does that even, am I so not with pop culture that I don't know what that means? Like, is that a word?
Right. I have not heard
Deaded.
that, but I find myself in a lot of situations like that as well, especially with my kids. Like, I don't think that's the way you use that word. And then they just tell me I'm old on that one. So.
In The Princess Bride, now, what was the word that they were using?
Inconceivable is the word in The Princess Bride, right? He keeps saying inconceivable and he's inconceivable. Yeah. So he's basically pointing out, you keep using that word, but I don't think it is what you think I don't think it means what you think it means, because it was clearly conceivable if it was happening right in front of him.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think, maybe pre Not Just Cute you? Because I think we all kind of maybe you didn't start in a traditional setting, like teaching in a traditional way. So pre Not Just Cute, Amanda, what did you think the word rigor meant? Like, what did you think?
So my process was a little bit different, because one of my first teaching opportunities was in a lab school at a university. So it was pretty ideal. It was pretty amazing. And so I think that that's framed the way that I see everything.
Yeah.
But I do think that there were times that I would hear rigor and think, oh yeah, we need to help our kids meet standards and achieve more, right? That's what rigor meant, was that we just expect more, essentially. I feel like is the way it's used a lot of times. But as I've dug into rigor, as I've run into it a lot with people, I've seen it as kind of a deflection, right? Like, well, play is nice for other kids, but we have a rigorous program.
Yeah.
Or, that's the sentiment, that we believe in rigor. Children need rigor. And whether they say it directly or not, it's kind of like, well, that's why we use flashcards and worksheets, or that's why we don't have time for play and art and these things that we know children really need. And so as I wrestled with that word, that I just felt like it was not being used the right way, and thought, am I kind of like you said, I was kind of wrestling with it, like, am I just the only one who doesn't understand this word? Or, what does it actually mean? And I thought, there are multiple, but I think of two definitions. One is, when I hear rigor, I often think of rigor mortis, right? Like when somebody dies and they stiffen.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like that's how a
Uh,
lot of people are using it, right? Like, we believe in rigor. We want our children to be stiff and silent and still, right? Like a dead corpse. That's
that's so
rigor,
true.
right? But if you actually look up the definition, one of the definitions of rigor is deep and thorough. And that definition of rigor I love, and absolutely think that
Yeah.
children should have a rigorous opportunity. They should be able to get deep into concepts and experiences, and they should be able to build a thorough understanding of things, which we know they get by playing and discovering and exploring. They do get a more rigorous understanding that way. And so that's why I feel like, I don't think it means what you think it means. I think it's getting misused a lot.
Oh my gosh, I love the second definition and how you framed that, because I'm just ready to throw rigor out with the trash, because I as well don't love that word. But when you look at it and frame it that way, yes, we want them to be able to go deeper, and play does that, right? Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Okay, so um what how can we like teach other people that we don't want, like, we don't want the dead rigor mortis
Right?
version, and we want this more beautiful, deep version of rigor.
Yeah.
How do we teach that
So
to
I think it depends on who you're talking to. So you could just flat out say that. Here's what rigor actually means. And if
Yeah,
you want to be so bold, say it's not dead corpses, right? That it's deep and thorough. It depends.
yeah,
Depends who your audience is, if you want to be that bold. But one of the ways that I teach is with research, because I feel like that speaks the language for a lot of people, especially if we're talking about administrators, certain parents. And I really feel that people don't value what they don't understand. And
yeah,
that lets me step back, and instead of just being cranky with people for not valuing things the way that I value, I just step back and say, okay, what do they not understand that I need to help them to understand? And so when it comes to a deep and thorough understanding, I think some of the research that I find most fascinating is two parts. One, and I think a lot of people have heard about this one and it's cited in the book, but just to give it a really brief overview, is that they found that when they gave children a novel toy, so something they'd never seen before, if
mhm,
they directly told the child, here's my new toy, here's how you use it, then the children learned how to use it the way that they were told. But if they were presented with it and said, here's this new toy, how do you think you use it? And maybe, like we do as teachers, pretending we don't know things that we actually know and accidentally uncovering some things, and they played with it, they discovered the same way the other group discovered to use it, but they also learned multiple other ways
mhm,
to use that same toy. So it just underscores the importance of discovery and exploration, and that you could say, had a much deeper, more thorough understanding of that toy, right? Because they got
mhm,
to explore and play with it. The other piece kind of builds on that, where they said, okay, so discovery is important, but what about if we're trying to teach a specific objective, right? So in that one, they were looking at attributes of a triangle, and they had direct instruction and they had guided play and free play. And they found that in a guided play situation where a teacher is there while children play with materials, they all had the same materials. It was just the
okay,
teaching style that was different. So if they all had the same materials to play with, if the teacher was there to talk with them and guide them, ask them questions, and just kind of be a Sherpa in this
yeah,
discovery experience, that those children learned to recognize a triangle that just as well as the direct instruction group, with one exception, and that was that the direct instruction group didn't do as well at recognizing irregular, kind of wonky triangles. They
Mm-hmm.
recognized, basically your flashcard equilateral triangle. They were really good at that. But the children who were in a guided play situation, because they had explored and played with it, and when children play with it, they're going to say, well, is this a triangle? They're going to try to
Yeah.
get weird with it, right?
Yeah.
So they learned to recognize weird triangles because that's how they played with it. So again, I would say that the play group had a more thorough, deeper, more rigorous understanding of what a triangle was because they played with it, because they explored it and answered their own curiosities that went deeper than the direct
Yeah.
instruction would.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love how you said they're going to get weird with it. That's so fun. Oh my goodness. Okay. If you could send a strongly worded email to every school or curriculum company or worksheet maker that uses rigor to sell their products, what would it say?
Oh, that's a tricky one on how to word it, right? I in general, I would say that a lot of those groups, I feel like the thing that I would point out to them is that we're not teaching theoretical children, we're teaching real children. And so we have to be
Mm,
able to adapt and respond to the children who are right in front of us. That's where
yeah,
real rigor comes from. You can't put it on a worksheet. You can't make a set of flashcards. It's the human beings that are, the adults that are next to those small human beings. It's that
yeah,
interaction between the two that helps support the play that make it really rigorous because we're responding to the children who are right in front of us. And you can't do that with I feel like worksheets and flashcards respond to hypothetical children, but human beings teach real children.
absolutely. Okay, do you think that the term rigor is thrown out more for the adults and the adults' anxiety around children learning or not learning than the children's needs?
Absolutely, 100%. I think it helps us feel better, and I think it helps speak to parent anxieties, stakeholder anxieties, and I think to some degree, we can learn from that. I feel like we can learn to use some of the same words or dispel the words, right? To do what we just talked about. That, yeah, we believe in rigor too. Here's what it looks like in our program. Here's
Mm,
how we support deep learning because that's how we define rigor. That's how rigor is defined, right? Here's how
yeah,
we support deep learning. So we can learn from that and say, okay, if this is a word that gives someone comfort, then let me show how what we're doing is better at delivering than a flashcard and a worksheet. Let's use the same words and we'll just make a better argument. But I do think that it is also stems to kind of this misunderstanding that I think some of that anxiety is represents the short-sightedness that some stakeholders approach early childhood with, that there's a lot of anxiety about how do we get these children to score on a kindergarten entrance exam, like that's the most important thing they could do. Right? And so I think that's the other thing that anxiety
yeah,
represents. And what we know, any of us who have studied early childhood and child development, is that so much of these better practices in early childhood education have outcomes, positive impacts that last decades, not next year, right? That I would much prefer the outcomes that we see in studies that show children more likely to graduate from high school, go to college, get jobs, stay out of prison, stay out of all
yeah,
these other negative things. That's what we see from things that support soft skills, play, and I'd rather take that over they scored really high on their kindergarten entrance exam and then struggled the rest of their lives, right? I mean, that's an
yeah.
extreme trade-off, but that's essentially what some of the research shows us. So it's recognizing that we have to get past that short-sightedness.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. And it
Okay.
also fits. I want to talk about your book and
Mhm.
why you wrote your book and what people can find in your book and how it's going to help early childhood educators who want children to have more play in their life.
Yeah. So it's called Not Just Cute: How Powerful Play Drives Development in Early Childhood, because I'm lazy and so I just keep naming everything not just cute, right?
The Lazy Girl's
So
Guide to Writing a Book.
right, right. Just start with the
Mhm.
name you already have.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do was I met so many teachers as I would do speaking and training, and we would talk about the research behind play and why it matters, just to be self-affirming as much as anything for some of these educators, and then to see here's how we apply it and put it into our practice. And I would often hear from them, I really believe what you're saying. I just wish I could say it the way that you did when I'm put on the spot. And so I
Mm,
wanted to write something that was based in the research that could kind of speak to that same, just like we talked about, those same anxieties, to come at it saying, okay, I'm really frustrated with some of these other voices right now, but I also recognize that at the end of the day, what we really want is what's best for children. So let
yeah.
me lay out essentially an argument for why this is best for children, that play is really necessary, and do it in a way that it's really conversational, easy to read. It's not a long book, but it has all the citations, all the footnotes, all the things to help it stand up to a rigorous academic
Mm.
examination, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to help early educators to build their confidence and be more comfortable articulating and advocating for this play, but also, if nothing else, give them something that's really easy for them to just put on their principal's desk and say, I really enjoyed this book. I hope you'll find time to read it this weekend, right?
I love
So that it
that.
would do some of that work for them.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about let's just talk about not just cute. What does that mean to you? And like, why has that become like your lazy girl's brand name?
Yeah, I feel like it comes from two directions. So one side is working with teachers who are really into the cute, right? Everything is cute and sparkly and fun, but we have no idea why we're doing anything, right? That we're just
Yeah.
so focused on what we're going to do that we don't know why we're doing it.
Mm,
And once we understand why things matter, why play matters, why the sensory table matters, why um, dramatic play is building language and literacy skills. When we understand that, then it changes how we do it, and we can do it better because we're making intentional choices about it. So that's the teacher side of it, helping teachers to understand that this is not just cute. Let's go past just the cute, fluffy stuff and
yeah.
make it meaningful so that it serves children better. But the flip side of it is also those administrators, stakeholders, decision makers, parents, helping them to understand, the work that your child's teacher is doing, it's not just cute. It's really, really important. It's really, really powerful. And they're not just throwing glorified birthday parties every day. They're putting
Yeah.
a lot of thought and intention into meaningful experiences that may look cute. They may look totally random and wacky, but here's the research behind it. Here's why they need to get in the mud. Here's why painting and using random loose parts and all of these things that we see in an early childhood program that might be dismissed or undervalued because someone thinks it's just cute. Here's why
Yeah.
that's actually really powerful and changes outcomes throughout their lives, really.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about research for a minute because that's one thing I think we're all so intimidated about in early childhood. I don't know what it is. I don't know. And me too. Like I am intimidated by research, but thank goodness like ChatGPT exists so I can like sometimes I can just like put it in there and say, "Can you like just summarize this for me?"
Huh?
Thanks. And then my ChatGPT is like, "Yes, queen, I can do that for you." Let's how do you find your research? I mean, do you like can your brain compute some of those like really academic-y things? Like how do you pare it down for people?
So some of how I find it, some of that is I have Google search alerts for certain
Okay.
researchers that I follow. So Kathy Hirsch-Pasek is obviously one of my favorites. Del Farron, her work has been fascinating to me. And she wrote the foreword of the book, which I was so grateful for. I call her my fairy godmother. She's been so supportive. But her work with the Tennessee Pre-K project or program was really, really fascinating. And that you can find in academic articles. Obviously, they've written and continue to write about them. But NPR also has interviewed her and written about the research. So I find it through Google searches when I find researchers whose work I really admire or find fascinating. So I have several of those set. But I also often find it in other places like NPR, The Atlantic, you know,
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal, different places where a lot of these academics are either writing or they're being written about. And
Yeah.
then that type of writing is often a little bit more digestible, but then it leads you. So maybe I'll read about it in a just a regular online thing, and then I'll go search and find the actual article, and then I'll dig into it. And sometimes it helps me to understand a little bit more about the details. Sometimes I've dug into sometimes I'll read an article and be like, that doesn't sound right. An article that's like, hey, it really doesn't matter. Kids don't need play or they don't need whatever. And I'll go look up the actual academic article and realize, oh, okay, yeah, that's not what this actually says. It's being
Yeah.
misinterpreted, right? Um, so that's kind of those two of the ways that I like to do that is, yeah, I have a Google Scholar alert that lets
Yeah.
me know when new things are being published by, I kind of have a list of people that I really enjoy. And then just finding in just typical media, but then doing the follow through. So go find what they actually wrote and find out what's actually going on in their research.
Do you want to know where I get mine?
Yeah, where do you get yours?
From the indexes of other people's books.
That is another great one, actually. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
And
was
I've
like,
done
I
that as
need
well.
Amanda's book just so I can get the index.
Well, that's why I have in fact, when I wrote it, I sat down with my husband and I was like, I want you to pretend you're really impressed. Look at this sexy bibliography. Like this is like my favorite part of the book. But because I do the same thing, I'll read books that I love and then I go back and I'm highlighting all the things in their index or the bibliography that I want to go look up myself because then oftentimes I'll find what they're talking about, but then it'll connect to something else along the way that you get to have your own aha moment from that same piece. So that's part of why I have a bibliography because I love to learn from other people's, but also to give it that, like, I didn't make this up. It's not research says, it's this research says it. It's right here.
Yeah. And I'm so guilty of being like, and this was in the past and I don't do this anymore, but like saying research says when I've heard other people say that and then talk about the research and didn't actually go and look up the research, but now I'm like, I do now look at the research and can back it up. When I say research says, I actually have the citation. Like I can give it to you if you want to see it because it's so important. It's so important to like stand on research, but then also be able to say here it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So that's
oftentimes,
cool.
like you said, yeah, you go back and find it and you realize, oh, not only does it say this, it also says this and this, right?
Yeah.
That lets you
Yes.
build an even stronger base.
Okay. Now I'm going to have some fun questions for you.
Okay.
Um, okay. If you, okay. I'm trying to rephrase this question a little bit in my head. If rigor were a person, now let's do if rigor were a person that is the dead version of rigor walking into a preschool classroom, what would they be wearing?
As soon as you said if it was a person, I pictured Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
I don't watch The Simpsons. I don't know who that is.
I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons when I was growing up, but I have since caught a few episodes.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
Mr. Burns he's in a
Mr.
suit.
Burns.
He's in a suit. He's kind of creepy and everything. He's like always tapping his fingers and everything is just very self-serving. Um, it's a lot of misunderstanding because everything revolves around him and what he wants and how he benefits.
Oh,
yeah. So that was the first thing that popped into my head was Mr. Burns.
I mean, let's just leave it at that because that's
right.
amazing. I want to know what you think about calendar time in preschool. Because this is a soapbox for me, but I just want to know what another human being who believes in play thinks about calendar time.
Yeah. So calendar time is something I have done. I remember as a student teacher in a kindergarten setting, that's what I did. Stepped in and did it. I feel like there are worse things you could do. So it's not like the worst offense, but I think if we step back and we look at the why, right? If we're teaching with intention, it's not the best use either. That there are much better things we could be doing. I know I remember when I learned one of the shifts when this discussion was kind of early, at least to me, of, calendar time is maybe not really effective. It's really not, we could do better for children. And one of the things that was introduced to me was rather than saying, hey, the weather today is cloudy and you put the cloud on the bear, right? Then instead just asking children, what do you notice about the weather today? And letting them write it in their weather journals, right?
Yeah.
And so I made that little shift and was blown away by how much more rigorous it was. Can we say that it was more deep, it was more thorough. Their thoughts and their expression and the skills that they were working on to do that were so much more meaningful. So I think calendar time is cute. I guess that's, if I were to sum it up, calendar time is cute and kids deserve more.
I love that. You're so much more polite than me. I would be like, just freaking rip the calendar off the wall. They don't need it. It's a waste of their time, is what I mean. You can just do
So much
it's too
better. You could do so much
abstract.
better.
Like the brain, if you look at the actual brain and brain research, like children
Mm-hmm.
aren't capable of, most children, of that abstract thought for abstract concepts like the passing of time. So really
Mm-hmm.
what we're just doing is having them memorize,
Yeah.
and memorize isn't actually true deep
It's not
understanding.
rigorous.
It's not rigor. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I think it's really redundant. It takes up a lot of time and we could just do so much better.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Tell people where they can connect with you, where anything you've got going on. Like pitch it now, let people know,
Yeah.
because I'm after listening to this, they're gonna be like, I need more Amanda Morgan in my life.
Yeah, so they can find the book, Not Just Cute, How Powerful Play Drives Development in Early Childhood. That's on Amazon. You can find me at notjustcute.com. And I think it's Amanda underscore not just cute. I should know my own Instagram handle. Yeah, I believe that's
We'll
what
put
it
it
is.
in the show notes.
Perfect, perfect. But you can find me there as well. And then I offer, I do in-person training and speaking, but I've also, we both talked about how funding is getting harder and harder for a lot of programs. And so I created an online professional development resource that is much more accessible for a lot of those smaller programs or programs that are finding their funding cut. And so that's it, Not Just Cute / powerful play.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing your knowledge, your rigorous knowledge here, and for letting people just relax a little and not have to be so tied to things being cute. So I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you. Admire the work you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Aw, thanks. If you liked what you heard today, share this podcast with your coworkers, admin, or maybe even your partner. And I love getting 5-star reviews so more people can embrace play. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or connect with me on Instagram or my website, KristenRBPeterson.com. Until next time.